Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. This week, the story of the first Mothman sightings, as written by a small-town journalist in 1966.
What stands 6 feet tall, has wings, 2 big red eyes 6 inches apart, and glides along an auto at 100 miles an hour?
Every year, hundreds of people celebrate Bridge Day by parachuting from the 876-foot-tall New River Gorge Bridge. But not just anyone can do it.
Well, generally, to become a base jumper, you start by learning how to skydive, so jumping out of airplanes.
And the Columbus Washboard Company used to make washboards for laundry. Now people use them to make music.
We have people come out of the woodwork to play washboards. We invite some, but the other ones just turn up.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia.
Support for this program is brought to you by Solar Holler, helping West Virginia homeowners manage their energy costs through solar power. Details at solarholler.com. Support for this program is provided by the Thrasher Group, an architecture, engineering, and field services firm serving West Virginia clients and communities since 1983. More information at thethrashergroup.com.
Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. Fans of Appalachian monsters and cryptids will know Mothman. In West Virginia lore, it's a human-sized creature with wings and red eyes that glow. It was first spotted in the 1960s. A small-town newspaper writer covered the Mothman sightings. That is, until tragedy struck the town. WVPB News Director Eric Douglas brings us this story.
The first time anyone saw the Mothman in West Virginia was the fall of 1966. The following is an excerpt from the Point Pleasant Register from Wednesday, November 16th of that year.
Headline: Couple see man-sized bird, creature, something. It was a bird or something. It definitely wasn't a flying saucer. 2 Point Pleasant couples said today they encountered a man-sized bird-like creature in the TNT area about midnight last night. Sheriff's deputies and city police went to the scene about 2 o'clock this morning but were unable to spot anything. But the 2 young men telling their story this morning were dead serious and asserted they hadn't been drinking. Steve Mallett of 3305 Jackson Avenue and Roger Scarberry of 809 30th Street described the thing as being about 6 or 7 feet tall, having a wingspan of 10 feet and red eyes about 2 inches in diameter and 6 inches apart. It was like a man with wings, Mallett said. It wasn't like anything you'd see on TV or in a monster movie.
Mason County and Point Pleasant were growing, and one journalist in particular watched the area closely. Her name was Mary Heyer, and she wrote for the Athens Messenger as a reporter and columnist from the paper's Point Pleasant office. Her column, Where the Waters Mingle, was where she talked about happenings in town, local gossip, and community events. Her weekly column on November 6, 1966, discussed weather predictions in the Old Farmer's Almanac for the coming year. But then came the sighting, November 16, 1966. Heyer wrote 10 columns between then and the end of the year that mentioned the Mason County monster, long before it earned the nickname Mothman. Her first headline story ran with the title, Winged, Red-Eyed Thing Chases Point Pleasant Couples Across Countryside. Heyer's story began with a question.
What stands 6 feet tall, has wings, 2 big red eyes 6 inches apart, and glides along an auto at 100 miles an hour? Don't know? Well, neither do 4 Point Pleasant residents who were chased by a weird, man-like thing Tuesday night.
The story ended with a quote from one of the 4 original people to see the creature.
Believe me, if you ever saw it, you'd be a believer.
A little ironically, the story wrapped around a shorter piece on the page announcing the Leonid meteor shower, which was set to peak that night for one of the most spectacular shows in more than a century. Heyer's next Mothman headline was the very next day. It read, Monster Returns to Mason.
6 or maybe 7 more people became believers in the Mason County monster Wednesday night. What is it they saw? They don't know. But they have managed to convince a raft of people they saw something.
A few days later, on November 20th, Heyer took a slightly more skeptical tone with her writing. The headline read, "Is mysterious creature balloon or crane?"
The thing has caused a sudden interest in the remote TNT plant area, and nightly motorists plow bumper to bumper over the dusty, dirty roads in hopes of spotting the creature.
Only 5 days later, there was another sighting, but this time it was in the daylight.
The Mason monster made its daylight debut Friday morning, adding Tom Urey, 25, of Clarksburg to its list of endorsees. Urey sighted the creature at 7:15 a.m. Friday while driving toward Clarksburg on Route 62. When he reached the vicinity of the Homer Smith farm, about 8 miles north of Point Pleasant, he saw the creature rise up just like a helicopter from a nearby field.
In her next column on November 26th, Heyer reflected on the effect the monster sighting was having on the town.
What does a strange monster do in a town or community? Or one might ask, what happens at the news desk or a paper? Since the strange creature was sighted in the area this week, it has brought more excitement than anything I have witnessed since I started working for the Messenger nearly 25 years ago. I always said nothing could compare with a flood back in the days when the town would be covered just about every year, but this has created more turmoil and fear for many. I don't care where you go. You can hear it being asked, wonder what the latest is on the thing that has been hovering over the area.
There were several more stories in December and early January of 1967, but things changed some on January 22nd when the UFO report started coming in.
The latest was by Tad Jones of Dunbar, who said he came upon the unidentified flying object on Interstate 64. Its description is like many that have been reported in many areas of the United States and around the world.
In an interesting twist, Heyer mentions John Keel, the author and paranormal investigator that had recently been to Point Pleasant looking into the sightings.
There is an interesting article in True Magazine. He says that each new sighting only adds to the mystery, one that the government has assigned scientists at the University of Colorado to solve. Any immediate solution, however, seems improbable. The origins and motivations of these creatures, if they are real, can only be speculated. But millions of people throughout the world are now convinced that something is going on and that there is somebody out there. More and more, respected scientists are beginning to take the matter seriously as they delve into the question of life on other worlds.
Heyer and Keel would end up working together over the next few years. On April 2nd, in her Where the Waters Mingle column, Heyer discussed continued sightings of both the monster and UFO sightings. She noted other communities are having watch parties looking for them.
Friday, John Keel of New York, a well-known ufologist, lecturer, and writer, and I appeared on the Jackie Alblinger Show on WCHS-TV in Charleston and discussed recent sightings of unidentified flying objects in West Virginia.
There were a few additional stories in the Athens Messenger and a few more sightings claiming the monster and a UFO appeared to make a rendezvous in midair. But things seemed to die down. Heyer's columns returned to normal. She looked at historical occurrences and social activities in town. Her September 10th column would turn out to be fateful.
39 years ago, when the Silver Bridge was dedicated on August 2nd, 1928, it was a gala affair, according to a story in the State Gazette published at that time in Point Pleasant. Perhaps it was not anticipated that in 40 years, it would hardly be sufficient to take care of the traffic on the heavily traveled U.S. Route 35 and the traffic between Ohio and West Virginia towns. Today, the State Road Commission is tearing apart the right side of the approach to the bridge on the West Virginia side to widen it.
Just 3 months later, on December 18th, she was writing about the Silver Bridge again, but there was no discussion of celebration. 3 days before, on December 15th at 5 p.m., the bridge collapsed into the Ohio River. The final death toll was 46 people.
I could easily change the name of my column to Where the Bodies Mingle, since the worst disaster ever to hit Point Pleasant struck with a flash Friday when the Silver Bridge collapsed, sending dozens of people to a water grave. I am sure we could never pick a time for tragedy, but I've heard it over and over that it's so much worse at Christmas time.
In another column dated December 19th, Heyer wrote,
I personally interviewed some of those who were rescued from the waters of the Silver Bridge tragedy here Friday night. And while their physical wounds will be healed, mentally They will relive this tragedy the rest of their lives.
In Heyer's Christmas Eve column, she wrote,
Friday, people began to relax after working endless hours since the tragedy. Many said they still could not conceive that fact that the once heavily traveled bridge on 6th Street is no longer there. December 15th will always be remembered as a Black Friday.
On the second anniversary of the bridge collapse, Heyer wrote a remembrance. The headline was, Reporter Regrets Her Biggest Story.
Every reporter, after years in the news writing business, has a few stories that stand out in the memory, making deeper impressions than the hundreds of run-of-mill articles you write. There may be murders, fires, campaigns for worthy causes, or a feature about an outstanding person. I have some of those myself, but the one that burned deepest into my memory, leaving an indelible mark, was the one I wish I never had to report. That's the Silver Bridge disaster.
On December 16th, 2 years and a day after the collapse, Heyer's column, with a slightly changed name to Where Waters Mingle, discussed the recent dedication of the new Memorial Bridge as a replacement to the Silver Bridge. The event was attended by the governors of Ohio and West Virginia, along with state and federal officials. She wrote of hearing a little boy talking about the event afterwards. She reported the boy said,
I'm not going to tell the teacher I was sick today because I missed school. I'm going to tell the truth. I attended this dedication because I thought it was important. I seen a lot of dignitaries and people in the new bridge, and I think it was educational, and I learned a lot. And, this new bridge is progress. We just had to have it.
And she wrapped it up with a personal thought.
As I sit here in my office tonight and look out across 6th Street, there is hardly a person working on the street and very few cars passing by, and my memories go back to 2 years ago, a few hours after the bridge collapsed. What a difference tonight than that night. I have all the compassion for those who lost their loved ones that fatal night, and I shall never forget. I am happy that we have a new bridge across the Ohio.
A few weeks later, into the start of 1970, there was a small blurb in the paper noting that she was admitted to Holzer Medical Center in Gallipolis, Ohio, with difficulty breathing and a slight case of pneumonia. 4 weeks after that, Mary Heyer died. Her obituary was published on February 16, 1970. It noted her column was widely read and that there was no story she wrote more about than the Silver Bridge. The masthead editorial in the paper began simply, Mary Heyer is gone. 5 years later, in March of 1975, John Keel published his book, The Mothman Prophecies, about the Mason County monster. That's where he made the connection between the Silver Bridge collapse and the appearance of the Mothman as a warning. He dedicated the book to Heyer.
That was WVPB's Eric Douglas. Eric had help with the story and dramatization from Bill Lynch and Liz McCormick. Coming up, an uncommon wealth of close encounters with aliens, ghosts, and cryptids. We'll hear from the authors of a new book of haunted stories from Kentucky. You're Inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams.
Support for WVPB is provided by the Huntington Museum of Art, presenting Joyful Spirits, Haitian art from the Winslow Anderson Collection through February 8, 2026. Details at hmoa.org.
There's a chill in the air, and it's a good time for telling spooky stories. Appalachia has a bunch of them. Some have been collected in a new book. It's titled Paranormal Kentucky, an uncommon wealth of close encounters with aliens, ghosts, and cryptids. It was written by Marie Mitchell and Mason Smith, a pair of retired Eastern Kentucky University professors turned paranormal investigators. Bill Lynch spoke with them.
Let's talk about the book a little bit.
How did you get to do a book about spooky stuff?
Well, for many years at EKU, I taught English 101 and 102. And English 102 is kind of the research class, so you have to have your students research a subject. And I got absolutely sick and tired of reading endless student papers about global warming. So I decided I would have them research paranormal phenomena.
And Mason's been interested in that for a long time, and I would probably be traveling with him to do the research, and we collaborate a lot on our writings. I just kind of signed myself on as co-editor. But the way we got connected with the University Press of Kentucky is Mason did an interview with the Humanities Council director, Bill Goodman, about Paranormal Kentucky, and someone from University Press heard him, called him up and asked him to write a book based on his vast knowledge of paranormal activity. So it kind of paid off. We've humored him all these years, and now it's kind of finally paid off into a book.
Okay.
And it's fun to talk to people about, what they believe they saw and put it in context, historical context, or just regional context, and just try to figure out. It's like a mystery, a puzzle. Try to figure out if we could come up with any clearer explanations than what's already been presented.
Because it is an honest mystery. These are really serious people. They've devoted a good part of their lives to researching some of these phenomena, and they're not trying to hoax or make a bunch of money or rip somebody off. They really, they would pass a lie detector test, and people have passed polygraph tests. And so we're thinking, well, what's going on with these people? What did they actually see out there?
But the problem is a lot of them were ridiculed by coming forward and saying, I think I saw a UFO, I think I saw Bigfoot, I think I saw a dog man, wolf man, goat man, you name it. It's harder then to come up with explanations because you're not collecting enough data, because once someone in the community comes forward with that information and description and is ridiculed, then others are reluctant to provide information of things that they might have seen because they don't want to be in that person's shoes of being kind of, the butt of the joke in their community.
And the only way we're going to go forward with trying to understand what the phenomenon is to come up with a good, solid data set. Mm-hmm. Well, they've been making fun of people for 70 or 80 years who said they saw UFOs and aliens, and they ridiculed these people, so we don't have a data set. And suddenly Uncle Sam decides, well, we really ought to find out what these uncorrelated targets are, and they spent all these millions of dollars on the ATIP program, the Advanced Aerospace Target Identification Program, to try to come up with a data set. Well, if they hadn't been ridiculing all these people, they might have had a better data set, and they could have made some progress on what these things actually are.
Why do you think we're so interested?
Well, I think people are naturally curious, and this is something extraordinary that's happened in someone else's life. What we try to do is incorporate a lot of history, so you learn something as you go along in reading the book.
And, encountering things that are unexplained, it's a very human kind of experience. As far back in history as we can look, people have had contact with the numinous, whether it's in a religious context or a folkloric context.
And when I was talking to some of the people, it's like, well, what would I have done in that situation? So I think people can place themselves in the shoes of the person making the report. And we were just doing a talk at the Clark County Library in Winchester, Kentucky. And afterwards, a woman came up to us and she goes, I saw a UFO. And it was years ago. She's an older woman. And she was standing in her parents' driveway, and she saw this bolt of light. And then after that, she saw a UFO, a flying saucer. And we're going, well, what did you do? And she goes, I was just so mesmerized about it. And we're going, but what happened? And she goes, if they had lowered a ramp, I think I would have walked into it. I would have just gone up with them and traveled with them. And that just blew us away because that's not the response we expected, and that's probably not what we would have done. We would have just hightailed it out of there and hoped that they weren't going to follow us.
Yeah, I would have screamed like a kindergartner and run away. So, I'm not a brave researcher. I'm a library researcher. I like to read about the accounts, but I would not want to be encountering one myself personally in the flesh.
With the research, was there anything that you found that surprised you?
I tell you one thing that really surprised me. Marie and I were investigating a couple of UFO cases, and we did everything we could think of. we went to the place. We talked to as many people at the location as we could. We read all the literature on it. And there are these two UFO events that at the end of the day, we just had to say, I don't know. I have no idea what happened to those people. And one of them was in 1955, the Kelly Hopkinsville incident, where this farm family believed they were under attack by some silver aliens. And the other was the Stanford incident from 1976, where these three women were driving home after a dinner engagement, and they're on a country road south of Stanford, Kentucky, near Danville, south of Lexington, and they're followed by a UFO, and then they have lost time, and they believe that they may have been abducted. And none of these people were trying to cash in on it. They were ridiculed by their friends and family members. The stories don't have happy endings, not because of anything any aliens did, but just because the community did not want to accept that story, and they were laughed at. So we thought, well, we can figure that, we'll really bear down on this and see if we can come up with a solution. And I can't tell you right now what happened to those women.
And I guess what surprised me was that some communities embrace the paranormal and others just want it to go away. Even though some tragic situations happen, but they find a way to embrace it and make it part of their community lore and history. Well, yes, of course, they're capitalizing on it to some degree, but also sharing that history of what happened and trying to make sense of it as well.
Okay. You mentioned data sets. So based on your research and the information that you've pulled together, does the research kind of lean to the direction that things like aliens and cryptids are real?
I think when Marie and I are interviewing these people, it is absolutely clear that it is real to them.
So we weren't skeptics or believers, we were observers, and again, trying to make sense of what they thought they saw. But yeah, they would swear on a stack of Bibles, they would take a lie detector test, and that's truly what they have convinced themselves they saw.
And we made it a deal between ourselves that we would never ridicule our witnesses. We had people sit down with us and do hour-long interviews telling us what they saw, and we would never try to talk them out of it or in print, ridicule them. We just have to respect the witnesses.
Well, and some of those witnesses are like park rangers and people who are employed with state parks. Brian Bush, who's with the Perryville Battlefield site, he says they hear cannons going off, horse hooves every day, and it's almost like just a day at the office. But again, Brian Bush is a very educated man, and he's written books himself about spirits that are still at the battlefield. So are we going to challenge him? No, I don't think so. That's what he believes he hears.
One of the sources that we cite in the book is a writer named Colin Dickey. And Colin Dickey has written about ghost stories. For example, ghost stories in the South frequently deal with enslaved people who were brutalized and never got justice. And one way that people deal with history that they can't officially remember, they can't tell because their grandfather and great-grandfather were among the people committing the atrocities, they tell those stories again in a ghost story context. So Colin Dickey argues that a lot of our paranormal stories are ways of dealing with issues in society that we can't deal with in any other way.
Do you think there are more sightings, or is that pop culture, or are people just more open about what they see or think they see?
Well, I certainly think pop culture plays an important part in it. In fact, Joe Nickel, who for many years was a lead researcher for the Skeptical Inquirer, he used to refer to the gray aliens as Steven Spielberg aliens because the grays were used by Steven Spielberg in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Well, after everyone saw the movie, then people began reporting gray aliens with almond-shaped eyes and, little three-fingered hands. We do have pop culture deeply influencing what we see because those are the images in our subconscious that we're pulling out when we have an anomalous experience.
And a lot of those early UFO sightings happened right after, wartime, and where a lot of new technology was probably being tested unbeknownst to the citizens in the area. And there was, again, the fear of being invaded and bombs and things like that. So when you saw unusual things in the sky, you kind of go to an invasion of some description. And a lot of it happened, those reports were around military bases. Kelly Hopkins is near Fort Campbell.
But the Discovery Channel has really put a lot of emphasis on Bigfoot expeditions. The Finding Bigfoot team, that series ran for about 6 or 7 years, and then I think there's another one called, is it Expedition Bigfoot or something? But I think they're still in production, and they've spent some time in West Virginia and Kentucky and Ohio, and then, of course, out west where Bigfoots are seen all over the place. So, there's a television show on a basic cable network where millions of people are watching that as entertainment. Mm-hmm. So it's not a surprise to me at all that a lot of people are reporting Bigfoot, because it is something we're consuming in our pop culture, in our diet. It's just, every time you turn on the TV, the History Channel or the Discovery Channel are doing Ancient Aliens or, Finding Bigfoot or something like that.
That was Marie Mitchell and Mason Smith speaking with Bill Lynch. Paranormal Kentucky is available from the University Press of Kentucky. Every October, hundreds of base jumpers descend on the new River Gorge Bridge in West Virginia. They come to leap from the 876-foot-tall bridge, pull their parachutes, and aim for the banks of the river below. In 2024, high school students Dylan Neal and Noah Fox got curious about how to become a Bridge Day base jumper. So they spoke with an expert, base jumper Marcus Ellison.
Bridge Day is an annual event that takes place every third Saturday in October at the New River Gorge Bridge. The main highlight of the event is the base jumpers who jump off the bridge and safely parachute to the bottom. We wanted to find out how to become a base jumper at Bridge Day, so we interviewed Marcus Ellison.
My part in making Bridge Day happen is I am the base jumping coordinator for all of the jumpers. So part of what that entails is getting all the jumpers to sign up, and then basically just distributing all the information that they need so that they can show up to Bridge Day on time, arrive at the location where we have jumpers headquarters, and then make sure everybody knows where they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to be doing, all the safety information that they need, and basically just corralling all the jumpers to come to Bridge Day and have a pretty much seamless good time.
How do you become a jumper? Like, what is that sign-on process?
So for me, well, generally to become a base jumper, you start by learning how to skydive. So jumping out of airplanes, which is what I did. So typically, people who teach base jumping courses won't accept you into their base jumping course until you've had at least 200 skydives. Okay. And so you start by learning how to skydive, and that what that does is get you familiar with the parachute system as a whole. And once you start learning that equipment and gear, and as you progress through that, then someone will take you under their wing and teach you how to base jump.
How do you become a jumper at Bridge Day?
Once you have established yourself in the community as a known, safe jumper, and someone has accepted you into their base jumping course, that's sort of your first ticket into becoming a Bridge Day jumper. Our community's fairly small. There's less than 5,000 people in the world that actively do this. And so we know who they are, right? And so we also know when somebody comes into our world and tries to lie to us. Because people do this every year. They come in and say, oh, I've done all this training, blah, blah, blah. And you go, well, where did you do it? And they tell you, and then you go to that place because you know everybody there, and they go, yeah, we don't know this person. And we have to vet every single person that comes through because it happens every year. People try to deceive us. They think they can cut corners. And Bridge Day is a technical base jump. The landing area is small. You have flowing white water down there. There's a lot of dangers. So that's kind of the second step to becoming a Bridge Day base jumper.
Could you describe the experience of base jumping?
Yeah, man. Base jumping is I still struggle to find the words to describe it because it's such a unique and exhilarating experience. People ask me all the time what it is that I do this for and why I do it, and it's mostly about the experiences I get to share with the other people. But there are these moments. You're standing on the edge of something huge, and normally that's pretty crazy. But you put a parachute on your back that is a life-saving device. A piece of gear that you can trust, and and it sort of changes that perspective of standing on the edge of something tall is wild, right? It now becomes a little bit more normal, right? Because you have a piece of gear that can save you. So there's this moment of freedom where your feet are touching the platform, and then there's that precise moment when you're not touching anything anymore. And there's this moment of lightness and freedom and escape where Nothing else matters other than what's happening right there in that moment. And all you have to do is perform that jump. That's the only thing that matters in the world. Nothing else. No job, no money, girlfriends, whatever. Nothing else matters. It's just that. And that is an incredibly good feeling. And I think that's why a lot of people come and continue to do it year after year.
Would you recommend base jumping?
Absolutely. Yes, I would 100% recommend base jumping to anybody, within reason, obviously. Mm-hmm. And like we spoke about before, you got to go through the proper training to get there. The steps that I told you about to train to base jump, I went through those same steps. I started skydiving in 2007. It was actually on my mother's birthday when I made my first jump. September 29th, 2007 was my first skydive. Yeah, I would recommend it to anybody. It's not for everybody, but I would recommend it to anybody.
What does Bridge Day mean to you?
I'm from here. I grew up here, went to Oak Hill High School, born and raised. And, I'm I am the first only true born and raised Fayette County local to jump on Bridge Day. And so that is, that's something that brings a little extra special meaning to Bridge Day for me, and kind of helps keep me going to do this, because, it's a lot of effort and a lot of work to put this thing on. And it's also a huge responsibility safety-wise. It has a special place in my heart because this is my hometown. Bridge Day is the oldest and longest-running single-day extreme sports event on the planet. That's significant if you start thinking about it. 40 plus years we've been doing this thing here in this little town you grew up in, and worldwide it has huge implications on extreme sports events and just large public events as a whole. So it's been an honor for me to be a part of it, and I hope to keep doing it for as long as I can.
This was Dylan Neal and Noah Fox with Inside Appalachia.
Dylan Neal and Noah Fox were media students at the Fayette Institute of Technology in West Virginia. Both have since graduated. According to their teacher, Keith Doherty, Noah now works for the media team at the Summit Bechtel Reserve in Glen Jean, a huge park used for events like the Boy Scout Jamboree. And Dylan is studying at Fairmont State University. The Columbus Washboard Company in Logan, Ohio, was founded in 1895. Back then, washboards were a necessary tool for doing the laundry each week. Today, of course, most people have a washer and dryer, or access to a laundromat. But the Columbus Washboard Company has found a way to stay open. In 2022, Folkways reporter Capri Cafaro visited the factory and brought us this story.
I'm at the Columbus Washboard Company in downtown Logan, Ohio, surrounded by the Hocking Hills. Today, a group of local musicians are at the factory storefront for a washboard jam session.
We have people come out of the woodwork to play washboards. We invite some, but the other ones just turn up.
That's Jackie Barnett, a New Zealand native who's lived in the Logan area for over 40 years. Barnett is one of the owners of the Columbus Washboard Company. Below the storefront, in the basement, is where the washboards are made. In some ways, the factory floor looks more like an antique store filled with old machinery. Barnett shows me the machine that drills holes into the wooden legs of the washboard.
The machine is original, from the early 1900s. The company was started in 1895, and these machines were introduced in the early 1900s.
Next, Barnett takes me to the crimping machine, which manipulates the texture of the metal that will become the body of the washboard. One of the staff feeds a roll of stainless steel into one side of the machine. As the metal works its way through, the smooth sheet becomes crumpled like an accordion. Depending on the machine setting, the metal can also be impressed with a spiral pattern while it's crimped. Barnett shows me some of the variations.
This crimp is called our double handy crimp. One side of it is coarse for scrubbing socks and blue jeans, getting grass stains out of them. The other side is soft and rounded for your lingerie. And this was used many, many years ago, and it's still used today.
The original purpose of a washboard was, of course, to wash clothing. But over time, the humble washboard has taken on many roles. Some people use washboards as decoration in their homes. And as a matter of fact, I have 3 Columbus washboards hanging in my own laundry room. Another popular use for the washboard is as an instrument, and it's used in all kinds of music styles, including country, jazz, jug band, and even punk. The concept of using a washboard in music is nothing new. Washboard playing traces back to hambone, a style of music with roots in African drum playing. Enslaved people were forbidden to use drums in an attempt to stifle self-expression. So they used clapping, stomping, and household items like the washboard to make the rhythm that would otherwise have been played on a drum. Some hambone musicians even used their body as an instrument, like in this 1980 recording of Donald Crower from North Carolina.
If that mockingbird don't sing.
Over the years, makers like the Columbus Washboard Company have innovated the design of the washboard to enhance its function as an instrument. As the last remaining washboard maker in the U.S., Barnett has incorporated players' suggestions into product design.
I actually had musicians calling me, and one of them suggested, why don't we try stainless steel? At the time, the tin that we were using was very thin and would wear out. And so we also introduced a heavier gauge galvanized metal.
Not only do different metals vary in durability, they make different sounds too. Just ask Joe Rose from Chillicothe, Ohio. He's a new washboard player and has been experimenting with the various sounds washboards can make. Rose explains that different crimping patterns create different sound effects. And what you use to strum the washboard with can change that sound too.
Usually you need something metal to magnify the sound to it. And depending on the type of metal it's made out of, it's going to make a deeper or, more bright sound to it.
And there are lots of metal tools to choose from, like thimbles, whisks, banjo picks, and even shotgun shells. Rose picks up a metal whisk to demonstrate.
This is the wavy crimp with the whisk. This is the spiral crimp with the whisk. And the glass one with the whisk.
Ultimately, the washboard is a percussion instrument. Jackie Barnett says remembering that is the secret to washboard playing.
It's just a matter of pretending you've got a drum set in front of you and you just make different noises and different sounds and just strum to the music.
With so many options, some players want customized washboards. Breezy Payton is one of those musicians who has collaborated with the Columbus Washboard Company to make custom instruments. I caught up with Payton by Zoom while she's out on the road touring with Reverend Payton's Big Damn Band. Payton says she is one of the few full-time professional washboard players in the world. Her passion for playing the washboard comes from her family's Kentucky roots.
My Granny Fanny, which was my great-grandma, had one on the wall of her house growing up, so I'd kind of messed around with it a little bit. But I studied just a lot of drumming techniques to learn the washboard, and I listened to a lot of old jug band and blues music that had it. And Washboard Sam was one of my favorites.
Washboard Sam was an African-American blues musician who was a washboard-playing pioneer. He's such a legend, his washboard is on display at the Smithsonian. Influenced by giants like Washboard Sam, Payton, who's white, started playing used washboards she'd find at antique stores. Her first was a Columbus washboard.
A lot of times these antique ones, they'd been used to clean clothes and stuff, so they were pretty worn out. So I was wearing through them really quick. And I was like, man, I should really think about just buying new ones.
Payton reached out to Columbus Washboard when she was ready to buy her new ones, in part because using an instrument made in the USA is something she values.
It was important to me to play an instrument that was close to home, too. And I couldn't believe that it was just down the street, really. In Columbus, Ohio, or outside of Columbus, where they made them.
Payton chooses different kinds of washboards depending on the setting.
When I'm recording, like in a studio, I generally use a brass washboard, but I use a galvanized or a stainless steel on tour because it gives me a little bit more volume. And the brass is a little bit softer, so it's better in a studio setting.
Even though the stainless and galvanized steel washboards are made to be more durable, Peyton still goes through a lot.
I play a new one nearly every day because I wear through them because I play such an aggressive style of washboard.
Peyton isn't the only washboard player Columbus Washboard supports. The company strives to make washboard music accessible to all. They helped establish the Washboard Festival in Logan, where people of all ages and experience levels can get on stage and play. The Columbus Washboard Company and the Washboard Festival have managed to capture the spirit of washboard playing, taking an everyday item and incorporating it into an art form.
I like the idea of someone, doing this monotonous task of doing their laundry and wanting to entertain themselves and singing along and banging on that washboard as they go along to make, a monotonous task a lot more fun.
For Inside Appalachia, I'm Capri Cafaro in Logan, Ohio.
I've been dreaming about a night like this. I've been dreaming about your sweet kiss, but it won't happen if we ain't on the phone.
That story is part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in the region. To see photos from the Columbus Washboard Company, visit our website, wvpublic.org. For 71 years, Deborah Nagy has lived on the Appalachian Plateau in southwestern Virginia. She remembers hot summers spent running barefoot and cooling off in creeks and waterholes. But as she's gotten older, she says the heat feels, different. That's actually more than a feeling. It's a scientific reality. Seniors are acutely vulnerable to health impacts from heat. And as pollution traps more heat, summers are becoming more intense. Katie Burke has more.
The 3 hottest Julys since at least 1850 all happened in the past 3 years. 2024 was hottest, followed by 2023, then 2025. Even mountainous places like Wise County, which are downright balmy compared with the Piedmont and coast, are feeling the heat. During the heat wave this past July, Deborah Nagy was grateful to have an air conditioner in her home in Wise.
There for about 2 weeks, we had like 90-degree weather solid. It got hot up here.
Nagy's AC unit came from a Dominion Energy-funded state program called Senior Cool Care, distributed by a local elder care agency called Mountain Empire Older Citizens, or MEOC.
My heat pump died, so I called down there.
The AC unit sits in her kitchen window, framed by light blue curtains, set to 70 degrees.
We couldn't have lived this summer without it.
The Senior Cool Care program serves people like Nagy, who are above 60 and live at or below 150% of the poverty level. After working hard in home caregiving her whole career, Nagy's monthly income is $1,140. She makes tough choices to divide that between food, medicine, and electricity. Nagy can afford to run her AC because of a federal program called the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP. The staff that administers LIHEAP was laid off in April, and the Trump administration has proposed cutting the program next year.
It really scares me to think about LIHEAP funds being completely cut out.
Marcia Krager administers energy assistance for Mountain Empire. Krager sees the tough choices people in her community make.
As hard as it is for people now, people are already struggling. That's a very scary situation.
Krager does what she can to help. Mountain Empire Older Citizens received $6,600 this year from Dominion, which they used to purchase 40 fans and 36 air conditioners. In June, those units went to households throughout Lee, Scott, and Wise counties, as well as the city of Norton. The funds don't cover everyone who is eligible. As summer ends, there are 110 people on the wait list, which gets longer each year.
We can't do everything for everybody, but we all work together to do what we can.
The coal mining region that Mountain Empire serves has some of the highest rates of chronic disease in the country, as well as an aging population. Tiffany Hunter is a LIHEAP recipient in nearby Norton who is recovering from a liver transplant. Hunter is worried about her mother, who has severe diabetes and early-onset dementia and also depends on energy assistance.
If LIHEAP is cut, her choices then become sit in the light hungry or sit in the dark and eat. She wouldn't eat.
As summers get hotter and with less support for food and healthcare, energy assistance has become a lifeline.
If you have COPD or you have black lung and you can't breathe and it's 100 degrees in your house, that absolutely could be life or death.
Electricity bills are expected to rise along with demand in the coming years. LIHEAP cannot meet current needs, serving only about 20% of those who are eligible, which includes not only seniors but also children and the disabled. So Mountain Empire also fundraises locally to help elderly people get through the winter. If LIHEAP is cut, the organization will be inundated with people who need assistance. As it is, people need both programs to pay their bills.
A lot of times they need both because electric rates are going up and, the cost of propane and heating oil continue to rise.
Deborah Nagy lives with chronic kidney disease. Nagy says that without LIHEAP, the heat poses a danger.
Basically, I have a fatal disease that sooner or later will probably get me. That would hurry it along a little, maybe.
Mountain Empire older citizens wouldn't be able to make up the difference that LIHEAP would leave behind. Tiffany Hunter knows this wouldn't be enough for her mom.
These government assistance programs were built into the system for a reason. We can't just stand back and say, oh, well, they'll figure out another way. For my mother, there is no other way.
In Wise, I'm Katie Burke.
That story was produced through a collaboration between Radio IQ and Climate Central, a non-advocacy science and news group. Michelle Young and Jennifer Brady contributed data reporting. This story was supported by the Pulitzer Center. Of Pittsburgh's three rivers, the Monongahela is the toughest to pronounce, and it's often underrated. The Allegheny Front's Carol Holsopple spoke with a river advocate to better understand the Mon.
Annie Quinn is a water resource manager and self-described watershed enthusiast. She's the founder and director of the Mon Water Project, which advocates for the Monongahela River, its watershed and residents.
It's just had this working river, forgotten background kind of history that leaves us kind of needing to know more and also needing to better understand it to protect it.
As part of our series, Reporting from the Mon, I asked Quinn about the biggest pollution problems the Monongahela faces.
So you have a couple major industries for sure, but for me, my professional overlap is with the amount of sewage that flows to the Mon.
How have the river and the people who live along it been impacted by these issues?
So one thing I think is tricky about our rivers is that their pollution levels kind of coincide with the development along their stream banks of industry as well as railroads. There's just an incredible amount of disconnection between communities and the river. It's just one of those rivers that people have forgotten about literally because they're unable to access it. I would say one of the other big harms that our residents are experiencing from the Mon itself is that because of the pollution level that is flowing through the river, what we do here affects people downstream on the Ohio River Basin. When we think about us as a bigger community, a community of the Ohio, it starts to look a little bit more dire how we treat the Mon.
What are some of the emerging threats along the river, including our climate?
Pittsburgh is not going to have a lot of the more popular climate concerns, but we are going to have a lot of water. When those rainstorms happen, they're happening in increased frequency and they're happening with increased amount of water that comes down in a short period of time, which means that combined sewer overflows system that overflows in a tenth of an inch of rain is going to overflow more often.
What about flooding?
So the Mon itself, it's the source of the flooding that happens in the bathtub. It's a famous section of the parkway right in downtown Pittsburgh where the road is actually at the river level. Some of the flooding on the Mon that's most concerning is actually happening in its tributary land area. So in my neighborhood in Greenfield, the surface flow, the stormwater flow that's flowing over the land as it's trying to get to the river, going downhill, is ending up in neighborhoods that are kind of their own bathtubs and their own bowls of flooding.
What are some of the solutions to these threats that are underway or that you think should be?
So there are some really, really, really big projects coming, and those are mostly What we refer to as gray infrastructure, which just means we're building additional pipes to handle water and sewage. Looking at the smaller level, the solutions that we need are what I like to refer to as distributed infrastructure. We need to think about how we can create a stepped and staged infrastructure system that captures as much of the rainwater as possible in each of these small, tiny land watersheds. As we're pulling out that rain from multiple different areas and they're stepped and staged above each other, we're overall creating a more climate resilient solution.
That was Annie Quinn with Kara Hulsapple. Annie Quinn is the founder and director of the Mon Water Project. You can find more from the Allegheny Front's Mon reporting series on its website. Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Mary Hott, Dave Odell and Dave Bing, Ron Mullinex, Blue Dot Sessions, and Dinosaur Burps. Bill Lynch is our producer. Abby Neff is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editor Nicole Musgrave. You can find us on Instagram @InAppalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/InsideAppalachia to subscribe to our newsletter and stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.